My understanding is that there was absolutely no sort of prenup agreement, that after any divorce, that jewellery would return to...
Whilst persistent rumours of marital strain continue to dog the couple. But what they're hearing, and this is quite wild, is that a divorce would most likely bankrupt the couple.
If it does last another 3 or 4 years, it'll be a miracle.
And Meghan both feel that America is kind of cooling on them and that it's difficult. And they want to be liked in the UK now. And that's where they're focusing, you know, a kind of a child.
So let's be clear. The marriage is fatally wounded. Arguments over how to raise the kids. Money problems, which creates huge marital stress.
So there are huge regrets coming on Harry's side, but a lot of it is because, as you rightly point out, he is simply going to want to fold and return after the divorce.
Harry gave Meghan the Diana engagement ring. Then he gave her Diana's bracelets. Then he gave her Diana's earrings. And now, with a divorce being openly discussed by his own media allies, we've just found out there is no legal agreement requiring any of it to come back. None of it. Not a single piece. And Harry apparently never thought to ask.
My understanding is that there was absolutely no sort of prenup agreement, that after any divorce, that jewellery would return to Harry. So what it means is that it would be part of a divorce settlement. Would Meghan want to keep it, though? That's the question. I think it's unlikely. If she were able to use that jewellery, and it's a horrible thing to say, but we all know how Meghan Markle works. If she were able to use that jewellery as some type of, I guess, blackmail bid in order to get up the settlement, because we know what she's about. She's about the moolah.
Let that land for a second. We're talking about jewellery that belonged to the most beloved woman in British royal history. Pieces that the British public feel, on some deep emotional level, belong to Diana's legacy, not to Meghan Markle's jewellery collection. And yet, legally, they're hers.
Okay, bad news on this front, Suze. My understanding is that Meghan's jewellery from Diana is hers to keep. There was no loan as part of this, and it is very likely that any divorce settlement would see her walk away with that jewellery. There's a couple of caveats to that. Prince Harry could make returning the jewellery part of any divorce arrangement. So, for example, I'm going to give you this percentage of my inheritance or a certain amount of millions, and in return, I expect you to return the gifts that were given to you during our courtship, which would, of course, include that Diana jewellery. But that would have to be something that Meghan agreed to.
Harry handed them over with no prenup clause, no loan agreement, no legal mechanism of any kind requiring their return. Just, here you go. All yours. So when we're now being told that Harry is panicking, that Harry desperately wants back into the UK, that Harry is fighting tooth and nail for government-funded security, that Harry is staging a charm offensive aimed at ordinary British people, you have to ask, what does he actually know that we don't?
Just over a year ago, briefing, I will never, ever even consider, even countenance leaving my new home of California to wanting to be here permanently. So, of course, this is about a post-marriage planning. When we said that Meghan Markle was actually selling a post-divorce book, we're right. She is doing that.
Because here's the thing. This panic makes a lot more sense once you understand what's sitting in Meghan Markle's jewellery box. Right, so let's start with what everyone else is covering. Because this story has been everywhere this week. Prince Harry wants to come back to the United Kingdom. He's briefing it. His team are briefing it. Media figures in the UK are talking about it openly. Alison Boshoff at the Daily Mail has been across this, describing a total 180 from Harry, a man who just 18 months ago had a communications professional from Team Sussex, explicitly telling journalists that Harry would never come back to the UK. Loved his life in California, was there forever. And now we're supposed to believe he's homesick. The mainstream coverage is framing it as troubled marriage, cooling Hollywood opportunities, and emotional reconnection with King Charles, all of which is true. Pieces of the puzzle, absolutely. And every commentator from here to Los Angeles is discussing the same surface-level story. The UK return, the marriage strain, Meghan going quiet, Harry going increasingly desperate for British approval.
18 months ago, I spoke to a communications professional on Team Sussex who said to me, Harry's never coming back to the UK. He has no interest in it to live. Never coming back to the UK, loves his life in California. He's here forever. And that has completely changed, hasn't it? Just turned around quite quietly while we've all been looking at other things that, you know, their eyes are on Europe again and the UK.
And none of them are asking the right question. Here's what I want to know. Why now? Why has a man who spent 3 years actually telling us, that Britain was racist, that the institution failed him, that he could never raise his children safely in this country, that California was home, why has that man done the most dramatic U-turn in modern royal history in 18 months, with apparently no apology, no acknowledgement, no reckoning with any of it? The official answer, the one his team are pushing, is that he wants his children to see him at Invictus, that he wants them to be proud of what he's built, that there's been some quiet, private rapprochement with his father that softened everything.
The people around them think that summer 2027 looks like.
The people around them think summer 2027 is all 4 of them in the UK, public facing, you know, at Invictus events. Harry wants to bring his children there. He wants his children to see him on the stage. He wants his children to see this work that he does there, which he regards as, you know, his most meaningful role, aside from being their dad. So yeah, that's what it looks like to them. I actually think if that's going to happen, I think that we're going to have to see them again a couple of times before Invictus. I would imagine that they must come out in the Easter holidays. You know, the kids are both at school. I would imagine there must be some kind of springtime visit to work, you know, to step up to Invictus.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely hearing a lot of chatter about they're all going to come in September, and actually suddenly rather like security suddenly didn't matter.
And isn't that lovely? Isn't that tidy? Yeah. Sure, that'll be it. Because what's also happening, simultaneously in the exact same news cycle, is that Harry is spending an estimated $3 million a year on private security. $3 million, and it's wiping them out. That figure comes from people close to the situation, and it's believed to be what they're currently paying their private security operation, not including additional costs for overseas travel, Colombia, Ukraine. Those trips carry extra bills on top. Now, if Harry gets what he's publicly demanding, RAVEC protection, the Royal and VIP Executive Committee coverage that was removed when he stepped back, that $3 million annual bill disappears overnight. Completely. Gone. And not just in the UK, RAVEC protection travels with you. Wherever you are in the world, you're covered.
All of a sudden, P. Dinah, not only is it giving him that open passage to come to the UK as much as he wants, it's also allowing him to wipe $3 million off their annual expenditure. And trust me, they have to wipe that $3 million off the annual expenditure. That's what it is believed they are paying at the moment, P. Dinah, to the private security company. But remember, there's extra costs if, for example, there are trips overseas which aren't covered by the government in question. I mean, certainly my belief is when it came to Ukraine, the government paid. When it came to Colombia, the government paid. But the RAVEC protection, P. Dinah, would allow them to travel wherever they wanted in the world.
It would mean Harry and Meghan could travel internationally, freely, without ever worrying about the security cost again. That is the real reason he needs this. That is why he is not giving up. And that is why his UK return plans aren't sentimental, they're financial. And this is where it gets weird, because at the exact same moment Harry is staging this charm offensive, the Jala podcast, the pivot toward British audiences, the suddenly warmer public tone, insiders are telling us the marriage is in serious trouble. These aren't fringe theories. These are reports landing in mainstream outlets. Kelvin Mackenzie, former editor of The Sun, went on record saying that if this marriage lasts another 3 or 4 years, it would be a miracle.
Clear. The marriage is fatally wounded. Arguments over how to raise the kids. Money problems, which creates huge marital stress. I mean, the things that cause marriages to collapse are money and infidelity, or a lack of action in the bedroom. Now, do you think that Meghan or Harry?
Lady Colin Campbell has been reporting that Harry is finding solace in the company of a local female friend. And even those who are cautious about making predictions are noting one very specific and telling thing. Harry has stopped mentioning his wife. He talks about being a father. He doesn't talk about being a husband. Read that again. When a man stops publicly claiming his marriage in interviews, that is not a PR strategy. That is a man who no longer knows what to say. So here's what I actually think is happening. And I'll say this clearly because nobody else seems to want to. Harry is doing post-divorce math. He's running the numbers on a future that doesn't include Meghan Markle, and what he sees on the other side is not pretty.
Reality is that it's probably lasted longer than some of the critics would have believed it to have lasted, right? If they're still, look, nobody wants the marriage to go pop, does it? Nobody wants it, with the exception probably of Dan Wootton, right? Nobody wants it, right? Nobody wants it to go pop. So, but if it does last another 3 or 4 years, it'd be a miracle. Because the other problem is, if it goes pop, the kids are going to stay in America. He's going to be living in a terrace somewhere in Preston, right? You know, when's he going to see her? I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is completely ridiculous. Now,
No Ravec protection means a $3 million annual security bill he cannot carry alone. No Netflix deal, and those figures are looking grim with reports that Ted Sarandon has effectively pulled the plug based on a failure, means no blank checks from Hollywood. The brands and sponsorships that were supposed to make them the Duke and Duchess of global influence have not materialized at the level they needed. America is cooling on them. The woke media that championed them in 2020 has quietly moved on. The UK, by contrast, still has something Harry wants: family, legacy, a line of succession he's still on, a father with cancer who won't live forever, a relationship with his brother that, however damaged, still carries constitutional weight. And this is going to matter enormously in the coming months, because if Harry is positioning himself for a life post-Meghan, the UK is the only place that makes strategic sense. It's the only place his name still means something independent of her. It's the only country where his charity work, his military connections, his family history, as any of it, carries weight without her brand attached to it. He's not coming back because he's healed. He's coming back because he's running out of road. Now, let's talk about the jewelry, because this is the part that nobody is connecting to any of this. And frankly, it should be front page. According to reporting from those close to the situation, there was no prenup agreement requiring Diana's jewelry to return to Harry upon divorce. None.
the insider says trying to dismantle all of that, plus paying out the legal fees for a divorce, would very likely bankrupt them. This would be the worst possible time for them to split up, which is terrible news for Harry, because it's my honest opinion that the only way that this guy can rebuild his life and have a bridge back to the royal family, reconnect with his father, and, with all of the fingers on my hands crossed, a reunion with his brother William, none of that's possible as long as he's married to Meghan Markle.
When Harry gave Meghan those pieces, the engagement ring, the bracelets, the earrings, all of it, there was no legal framework specifying that in the event the marriage ended, those items would revert to him or to the crown. Which is insane, by the way. We are talking about the most emotionally significant jewellery in the history of the British royal family. Pieces that carry Diana's name, Diana's image, Diana's story. Pieces that British people feel belong to national memory. And Harry handed them to Meghan Markle, a woman who has publicly accused his family of racism, who has aired the most intimate royal grievances in history on American television, who left the institution in the most acrimonious split since Diana herself. And he did it with no legal protection whatsoever. This means that as things stand, those pieces are Meghan's. Legally, completely. To keep, to bequeath, to sell, to do with as she sees fit. And you, watching this, are thinking the same thing I am. If Meghan wanted to, she could walk away from this marriage with Diana's engagement ring on her finger, and there is nothing, legally, Harry could do about it. Now, could Harry negotiate the jewellery back as part of a divorce settlement? Yes, that's technically possible. Sources suggest he could offer other assets. a percentage of his inheritance, a financial payment, in exchange for Meghan returning the pieces. So it's not impossible. The door isn't completely closed. But here's the problem with that argument. We know how Meghan negotiates, and the answer is she doesn't. She wins. Look at the pattern. We've seen this playbook before. Harry has a consistent and almost impressive track record of walking into arrangements with no legal protection and being surprised when they go badly for him.
We're going to have this whiny little wanker back in the United Kingdom, back demanding security paid for by us. No, honestly, part of me thinks the best possible punishment for the Duke of Delusion, after accusing the British royal family of being racist, after making the late Queen Elizabeth II's dying days a misery, after putting Prince Philip through God knows what on his deathbed. Part of me thinks the best punishment for him, Calvin, is to actually have to live in perpetuity with one of the worst women to ever exist.
Frogmore Cottage, gone. Security coverage, removed. Netflix deals and Spotify deals that were supposed to guarantee their financial future, over or underperforming. At every single step of this saga, Harry has been outmaneuvered every time. And now we're supposed to believe that in a divorce negotiation, where Meghan holds Diana's jewellery, holds the children's US residency, holds the California legal advantage, holds the moral narrative she's been building for 3 years, Harry is somehow going to come out ahead? Call me cynical, but I've been watching this too long to think it works out for him. There's something else worth understanding here, and it's the question of what Meghan actually wants from this jewellery. Because here's the thing, and this is a detail that's been floating around but nobody's really chewed on. Does Meghan actually want to keep these pieces? On a practical level, they're complicated assets to own. They tie her to the royal family she spent years publicly distancing herself from. Every time she wears them, it's a story. Every time she doesn't wear them, that's a story too. But as leverage, as a negotiating chip in a settlement, they're extraordinarily powerful, emotionally, symbolically. You want Harry to think twice before pushing too hard in a divorce negotiation? Remind him what you're holding. Remind him what you could walk away with. Remind him that the British public's reaction to Meghan Markle selling Diana's sapphire ring at a Sotheby's auction would be, how do I put this? Not ideal for the Sussex brand. It's the kind of leverage you don't even have to use. You just have to have it. And meanwhile, while all of this is playing out privately, Harry is making a catastrophic mess of things publicly. So apparently, Harry's team briefed the Sunday Mirror that he is continuing his campaign to demand taxpayer-funded security, that he was buoyed by a reunion with King Charles, and that he wants to arrange further meetings. The idea being, oh, the King's met with Harry, the King seems open to it. The Prime Minister needs to keep the King happy, so surely the government will fall into line. Except the Home Office is not falling into line. Not even close.
I think this is Harry wanting to be liked, and he's trying to be appealing again to ordinary people who have, not enjoyed being called racist. I think there are people on two sides of this blanket, and they each of them have a thread in their hands and they're pulling it. I think it is being unpicked. Whether this actually happens, I don't know. And you have your wonderful sources in the palace. I don't. I'm just showbiz queen. And I've got some fingers in the Harry and Meghan pie. So all I can tell you for sure is they want it to happen, and they think it's going to happen. They think they feel optimistic that they are on their way back in.
According to that same Sunday Mirror reporting, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood and the Home Office are furious. Not annoyed, furious. And not for the first time, this is described as being further angered, meaning they already hated what Harry was doing, and he then made it worse. Because he leaked a private security threat assessment, a report from his own private security company claiming he's a terror target, directly to a media outlet, Woke TV, while simultaneously having his team make public announcements about his itinerary in what the reporting described as an attempt to force the government's hand. How do you think the British Home Office reacted to being publicly bounced into a security decision by a man who voluntarily left the royal family 6 years ago? Exactly. This is not the behaviour of a man who is rebuilding trust with British institutions. This is the behaviour of a man who is so desperate for a specific outcome that he's torching the very relationships he needs to get it. And this is where I get frustrated, because there are people, reasonable people, people I respect, and who look at all of this and say, well, this is a father wanting to see his family, a son wanting to reconcile with his dying father.
You know, Harry and Meghan both feel that America is kind of cooling on them and that it's difficult, and they want to be liked in the UK now. And that's where they're focusing, you know, a kind of a charm offensive. And I think, and bizarre as it was, as you said, there's a kind of sense of whiplash with that Joe Marler podcast. But I think this is Harry wanting to be liked, and he's trying to be appealing again to ordinary people who have, you know, not enjoyed being called racists and not enjoyed the things he said about his family.
Give him some grace. And I understand that argument. I do. King Charles has cancer. That is a real and human thing. And whatever Harry's faults, he is still a son who is watching his father face the end of his life. But here's the counter-argument, and I'm going to put it as plainly as I can. You don't get to accuse your family of racism on international television. You don't get to publish a memoir with graphic claims about your brother physically assaulting you. You don't get to make your grandmother's dying years a misery and she was clear, by the way, that the way Meghan behaved towards staff was unacceptable, a fact that was known internally for months before a single journalist reported it. You don't do all of that, and then, when the money runs out and the marriage starts collapsing, quietly expect everyone to open the door and say, "Welcome home." It doesn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way.
He feels that he can travel in and out as much as he wants to live this sort of part-time life where he can spend as much time away from Meghan as humanly possible.
I just think he's trying to compete with his brother. He's trying to have what his brother has. And yeah, getting this security is going to allow him a lot more flexibility, but that's not going to change. From what I've seen, that's not going to.
And yet, we're being told it might. King Charles, for all his faults, is a man who desperately wants to be seen as the forgiving monarch, who is haunted reportedly by his treatment of Diana, by the feeling that if he'd been softer post-divorce, some of the catastrophe that followed might not have happened. And that psychology, that specific guilt, appears to be driving an approach to Harry that people around William are finding deeply alarming. Because here's the constitutional reality that gets lost in all the personal drama. Currently, the line of succession runs: William, George, Charlotte, Louis, and then Harry. If something were to happen to all four of them, and yes, it's a low probability, but it has happened to other people in other helicopters, and William is apparently still flying his entire family in one, then Harry becomes king, and Meghan becomes queen. That is not a technicality. That is a live constitutional question. Now, we've seen this playbook before. Every time Harry and Meghan face a period of professional failure, a period of public cooling, a period of financial pressure, there's a pivot, there's a reframe, there's a new narrative launched into the media. 2 years ago, it was the Netflix documentary. Then it was Spare. Then it was the Spotify deal. Then it was the Polo series. Then it was the lifestyle brand. Each time, the story resets. Each time, there's a new angle for sympathetic journalists to run with. And this time, the pivot is the UK return.
This is the natural progression for someone who has gone about things the way Harry and Meghan have. I mean, you look at how they wanted to leave the UK because of racism, because of not being protected. Oh, let's go over now to America and get, all these opportunities off of our royal titles. And then now America is not warming to them anymore. Oh, okay, let's leave America. People don't like it. Let's go down back to the UK. Well, newsflash, the people in the United Kingdom still don't like you. Like, why would you even go back to the UK? The problem here, Dan, is they're not having their coming to Jesus moment about the problem being them and trying to change who they are. what are you going to do? Just pick up and leave whenever it gets, bad for you? This is not a good life for your children. You're certainly not living the kind of life that's helping you, get some stability by learning something and understanding, you're the reason for all of your problems.
The reconciliation arc. The Harry wants to bring his children to Invictus. He wants to be seen as a good father. He wants to rebuild narrative. It's being seeded carefully. Sources close to the couple are describing summer 2027 as a key moment. All four of them publicly in the UK at the Invictus Games. But sources close to Harry and sources close to Meghan are apparently not on the same page about what summer 2027 looks like, because Meghan's people are briefing that she's not keen on the UK reveal, that she's focused on building an independent career in Hollywood, that her priorities are pointed firmly west, not east. And Harry's people are briefing the opposite. When a couple's PR teams are briefing the same journalists from opposite positions, that is not a communications strategy. That is two people who are no longer running the same play. So where does this actually leave us? Harry is broke by royal standards, burning through private security fees he can't sustain, stuck in a marriage that multiple senior media figures are openly predicting won't survive, estranged from the institution that gave his name its value, increasingly desperate for the British public to like him again, and sitting across from a woman who is holding, among other things, the jewellery his mother wore. That is not a position of strength, and the UK comeback isn't a redemption arc. It's a contingency plan. It's what you reach for when plan A has failed and plan B is on fire.
But certainly he doesn't enjoy spending time with Meghan Markle. He's not a happy man at the moment. And of course, Lady Colin Campbell reporting this week that that's why he is finding some solace in a local female friend. So you've got that going on. While at the same time, P. Dinah, I think, and I'm sorry to come back to it and hark back to it, but I genuinely believe all of this is driven by money.
Now, maybe Harry gets what he wants. Maybe the charm offensive works. Maybe King Charles opens a door that William can't close. Maybe the Home Office eventually caves on the security question and Harry gets his Ravec protection and the $3 million annual bill goes away. But here's what doesn't go away. The jewellery. Even in the best case scenario, even if Harry negotiates a settlement, even if he gets the kids, even if he rebuilds something in the UK, that negotiation happens in the shadow of what Meghan holds. And the terms of that settlement will reflect it. He gave her the ultimate leverage. He did it voluntarily. He did it with no prenup, no loan clause, no legal protection of any kind. And whatever this marriage costs him in the end, and it is going to cost him, that is going to be part of the bill. Tell me I'm wrong, drop it in the comments, because I genuinely want to know, do you think Harry ever gets Diana's jewellery back? Do you think Meghan keeps it? Do you think this becomes the central battle in whatever settlement eventually lands? Because if you've been watching this saga as long as I have, and a lot of you have, and thank you for that, you already know the answer. You just don't want to say it out loud. Harry walked into this without reading the small print. He's been doing it his entire adult life. And he's about to find out, one more time, exactly what that costs. If this story is as important to you as it is to me, hit subscribe, turn on the bell, because this is moving fast now, and when the next piece drops, you're going to want to be here.